Imagine marrying into a wealthy family, believing you found love, only to spend years being humiliated, doubted, and silenced. Now picture the night they accused you of raising another man's child. And in that very moment, you turned the tables with one envelope that changed everything. This is the unforgettable story of Salma, a mother in Tanzania who chose dignity over wealth, and proved that strength sometimes comes in the quietest, most powerful way. Welcome to Folktales Hub. Please hit the subscribe button and share with friends. The city of Dar es Salaam is never completely silent. Even when the night stretches long and the moon casts its silver glow across the restless Indian Ocean, there is always a murmur of life. From the distance comes the faint sound of fishermen returning to the shore, their lanterns bobbing on the water like fireflies. Vendors call out on street corners, their voices rising above the rhythmic hum of buses and the laughter of young people spilling out of cafes. But inside a modest apartment tucked away in Mikokini, a different kind of rhythm filled the air. It was quieter, gentler, more fragile, the rhythm of a new mother rocking her baby to sleep. Salma sat on a worn wooden chair by the dining table, the kerosene lamp beside her casting soft golden light across the room. Her hair was tied back hastily, her eyes heavy with exhaustion, yet she carried a proud smile each time her gaze fell upon her daughter, little Nima. The baby's small hands curled around Salma's thumb, her chest rising and falling with delicate breaths. To Salma, those tiny breaths were worth more than all the treasures of the world. Yet, even in that tender moment, Salma's heart carried a heavy ache. Tonight, her husband's family had invited them for dinner, a dinner that was supposed to be about celebrating Nima turning 6 months old. But Salma knew better. For her, the invitation felt less like an honor and more like a trial, a carefully staged gathering where every word and every glance would be another test of her worth. Salma had not been born into wealth or luxury. She came from Tabata, one of the bustling neighborhoods of Dar es Salaam where streets are alive with the sound of children playing football, women bargaining in the market, and neighbors sharing stories as they sip steaming cups of chai. Her mother, Mariam, had raised her alone after her father's sudden passing. Life had not been easy. Mariam sold vegetables in Kariaka Market, sometimes standing for 12 hours a day under the scorching sun just to bring home enough to cover rent and food. Their small 2-room house often smelled of beans simmering on the stove or freshly fried mandotsi. Though money was scarce, laughter was never in short supply. From Mariam, Salma learned resilience. She learned that dignity is worth more than wealth, that love makes a home richer than any mansion, and that a woman's strength is often forged in silence. Salma carried those lessons with her when she earned a scholarship to the University of Dar es Salaam, where her life would change forever. It was in the university library where she first met Daniel. He was confident, tall, with a warm smile that made people gravitate toward him. Daniel came from a world that felt almost unreachable to Salma, the son of a hotel magnate, raised in a large villa in Oyster Bay, accustomed to family drivers, private schools, and trips abroad. They couldn't have been more different. Salma, with her simple dresses and quiet confidence, was worlds apart from the polished, well-connected circles Daniel moved in. Yet Daniel was drawn to her. Her sincerity, her grounded spirit, her laughter that carried no pretense. It was unlike anything he knew. Their love grew in whispered conversations under the jacaranda trees that lined the campus, in long walks by the beach at Coco, in dreams about the future shared over late-night cups of kahawa. Daniel made Salma feel like she belonged somewhere larger than her own little world, and Salma made Daniel feel anchored to something real, something honest. Against whispers from Daniel's friends and warnings from Salma's own, they fell in love. Against the cold stares of his family, they chose each other. And after graduation, despite raised eyebrows and quiet disapproval, they married. But love, as Salma would soon learn, was not enough to silence prejudice. Daniel's mother, Mama Grace, never hid her disapproval. She was a woman of presence, always dressed in fine chitonge trimmed with gold thread, her wrists heavy with bangles, her voice carrying authority wherever she went. To her, Daniel's choice was a mistake. "She is polite," Mama Grace would say to relatives, her lips curved into a sharp smile, "but she has not been raised in our kind of life. She cannot understand our ways. Those words carried venom masked in sweetness. Angela, Daniel's younger sister, followed her mother's lead. Where Mama Grace used subtle digs, Angela wielded her words like knives. She would laugh at Salma's simple dresses, mock her Swahili proverbs as village sayings, and openly compare her to Daniel's ex-girlfriend, a wealthy lawyer from Arusha who, in their eyes, had been the perfect match. Salma told herself not to take it to heart. She believed that with patience and kindness, they would eventually see her worth. She believed her love for Daniel would bridge the gap. But acceptance never came. When Salma discovered she was pregnant, she thought perhaps this was the blessing that would bring them all together. A baby, she hoped, would soften Mama Grace's sternness and perhaps make Angela look at her differently. But when Nima was born, instead of joy, suspicion filled the room. Angela was the first to voice it. "She doesn't look like Daniel," she said one afternoon, peering into the baby's cradle with a smirk. "Her nose is so small. Her forehead. I don't know. Maybe she takes after someone else." Mama Grace would nod thoughtfully, as though the comments had weight. "Babies change every day," she would say, her tone laced with doubt. Salma would force a smile. "Yes, she will grow into her features." But the whispers did not stop. What began as casual remarks turned into sharper accusations. Soon they were no longer implying Salma was not good enough. They were questioning her loyalty, her dignity, even Nima's place in the family. For Salma, every word was like a thorn piercing her heart. She could endure their insults toward her, but when they questioned her daughter's worth, the pain became unbearable. Yet the deepest wound came not from Mama Grace or Angela, but from Daniel. At family dinners, when the comments turned cruel, Salma would look to him, her eyes pleading for him to speak, to defend her. But Daniel would stare at his plate, sip his drink, or pretend not to hear. "That's just how they are," he would tell her later when they were alone. "Don't take it so seriously." Those words felt like betrayal. His silence wasn't neutral. It was choosing them over her. At night, when Daniel was away at work or too tired to talk, Salma would stay awake, rocking Nima in the quiet. Tears would slip down her cheeks as she whispered to her baby, "They can say what they want, my love. But I will always protect you. I will always fight for you." Nima became her anchor, her reason to keep enduring. Every time Salma felt she was drowning, one look at her daughter reminded her of what truly mattered. 6 months after Nima's birth, Mama Grace announced a dinner at her grand house in Oyster Bay. She said it was to celebrate the baby's growth, but Salma sensed another motive. The day of the dinner, as they drove along Ali Hassan Winyi Road toward the coast, Salma's chest tightened. The city lights flickered outside the car window, but inside, silence pressed heavy between her and Daniel. She wanted to ask him, "Will you defend us tonight? Will you finally speak up?" But the words stuck in her throat. When they arrived, the house glowed with chandeliers, laughter spilling from the patio. The dining table stretched long, covered in fine china, the aroma of pilau and grilled fish filling the air. To outsiders, it looked like a celebration. But to Salma, the air felt thick with judgment. At first, the remarks were subtle. "My, Nima's head is quite big, isn't it?" Mama Grace said, forcing a laugh. Angela giggled. "Yes, and her nose. It doesn't really look like anyone from our side of the family." "Strange, isn't it?" Salma forced a polite smile. Her hands shook as she adjusted Nima's blanket. "Babies change every day. She'll grow into her features." But the comment sharpened. "Are you sure she takes after Daniel at all?" Angela asked, her voice mocking. "Maybe she takes after someone else." Salma's stomach dropped. The word struck like a slap. Her eyes darted to Daniel. "Please say something," she begged silently. But he sat stiffly, eyes fixed on his plate. His silence roared louder than their insults. Something inside Salma broke. Her hands trembled slightly as she reached into her handbag. For months, she had kept a sealed envelope there. Hidden like a shield she prayed she'd never need to use. Tonight, they had left her no choice. She placed it in the center of the table. Her voice, though soft, carried through the room with clarity. Since you all love proof more than respect, maybe this will finally shut you up. The room fell silent. Forks froze midair. Daniel's eyes widened. Mama Grace and Angela exchanged startled glances. Only Nima's soft coo broke the tension. Salma held her daughter closer, her face calm but her heart breaking. She had prepared for this moment in silence, building her strength piece by piece. And as the weight of her words hung in the air, she knew nothing would ever be the same again. The silence that followed Salma's words was heavy, the kind of silence that presses down on the chest and makes every breath feel like a confession. The sealed envelope sat in the middle of the dinner table like an uninvited guest, daring anyone to touch it. Mama Grace's eyes narrowed as she leaned back in her chair, her gold bangles clinking softly. "What is this, Salma?" she asked, her voice dripping with disdain. Salma met her gaze, her arms tightening around baby Nima. "It's proof. Since you have made it your mission to question my child, your granddaughter, I've done what none of you had the courage or decency to do. That envelope contains the DNA results. It proves beyond doubt that Nima is Daniel's daughter." The words struck the room like lightning. Angela scoffed, flipping her hair back. "DNA results," she said mockingly. "What kind of woman does that? If you were faithful, you wouldn't even need to." "Enough." Salma's voice, usually soft, rose with a strength that startled even her. She looked directly at Angela, her eyes shimmering not with tears but with fire. "You've spent months mocking me, insulting my child. Tonight you've crossed a line." Angela's face reddened, but she said nothing. Daniel shifted uncomfortably in his chair, his eyes darting between his wife, his mother, and the envelope. He opened his mouth, then closed it again. His silence screamed louder than any words. Mama Grace finally reached out and touched the envelope with the tip of her manicured finger, as though it might burn her. "Do you think a piece of paper will change anything?" she asked coldly. "Even if it says what you claim, character cannot be proven on paper. Blood does not erase upbringing. My son deserves better." The words cut deep, sharper than a blade. Salma felt her chest tighten, but she steadied her breath. She had expected this. Deep down, she knew that even undeniable proof would not soften Mama Grace's heart. People who have already decided you are unworthy do not change because of facts. They only find new ways to disguise their cruelty. Angela, emboldened by her mother's words, sneered. "She's right. You can wave results around, but you'll never be one of us. You don't belong in this family, Salma. You never did." Salma's throat burned, but she refused to cry. Not here. Not in front of them. Instead, she gently rocked Nima, who stirred slightly in her arms. Looking down at her daughter's peaceful face, Salma felt something shift inside her. The pain that had weighed her down for months began to transform into something else. Resolve. "Daniel," Salma said suddenly, her voice trembling not with fear but with determination. "Say something. Tell them the truth. Tell them Nima is yours. Tell them we don't deserve this humiliation." All eyes turned to him. Daniel swallowed hard, his hand tightening around his glass. Maybe it's better if we just open it," he said finally, his voice low. The words struck Salma like a slap across the face. Her heart shattered. Not because he doubted her. She knew he didn't deep inside, but because he was too afraid of his mother, too weak to stand up for his wife and child. His silence had always hurt, but now his cowardice was louder than ever. Tears blurred her vision, but she blinked them away. She refused to let them see her break. "Open it then," she said softly, her voice flat. "Let the truth come out once and for all." Angela snatched the envelope quickly, eager for a spectacle. She tore it open, unfolded the papers, and scanned the words. Her smirk faltered. Her eyes darted back and forth, disbelief flickering across her face. Mama Grace snatched the papers from her and read them too. For a moment her mask slipped. Shock, even embarrassment, flashed in her eyes. But just as quickly, she replaced it with cold indifference. "It says Nima is Daniel's child," Angela muttered, her voice flat, almost resentful. Salma's chest swelled with both relief and sorrow. Relief that the truth was now undeniable. Sorrow that it had come to this. She looked at Daniel. He couldn't meet her eyes. The victory felt hollow. Proof had been laid bare, but respect had not been earned. Acceptance would never come. But the envelope had contained more than just the DNA results. Salma reached into her bag again and pulled out a second set of documents. She placed them calmly on the table, her voice steady as she spoke. "I knew this family would never see me or my daughter for who we truly are. That's why I came prepared for more than just tonight. These are separation papers. And documents detailing financial transfers Daniel made without my knowledge, ones that could put him in very difficult positions if revealed." The room froze. Daniel's head snapped up, his eyes wide with shock. "Salma, what are you talking about?" Salma met his gaze for the first time that night. Her own eyes filled with quiet strength. "Don't look so surprised. Do you think I've been blind all these months? While I rocked our daughter to sleep, while I endured their cruelty, I saw the bank notifications, the transfers to accounts I never knew existed. I stayed silent because I believed in us. But tonight your silence showed me where you truly stand. And I refuse to raise my daughter in a home where her worth is questioned and her mother's dignity is trampled." Mama Grace stiffened, anger flashing across her face. Angela's mouth opened and closed like a fish out of water. Daniel's face paled. For the first time all evening, Salma felt power shift in her direction. "Salma, please," Daniel started, his voice shaking. But Salma held up her hand. "No, Daniel. I've begged for your voice for months. Begged you to defend me, to defend your daughter. Tonight I've realized something. If you can't find your voice for us, I will not live in silence for you. My daughter will not grow up watching her mother humiliated in this house." Her words carried the weight of all her sleepless nights, all her swallowed tears, all the moments she had bitten her tongue to keep the peace. Mama Grace slammed her hand against the table. "You ungrateful girl. After everything. After everything." Salma cut in, her voice calm but firm. "You mean after the insults? After the whispers? After questioning the blood of your own grandchild? Gratitude is not owed where cruelty is given." The room fell silent again. Even the clinking of cutlery had stopped. The only sound was Nima's gentle breathing against Salma's chest. Salma rose slowly, cradling her daughter in one arm and gathering her bag with the other. Her movements were deliberate, graceful, filled with dignity. "Enjoy your dinner," she said softly, her voice almost tender. "I hope one day you learn that wealth without kindness is nothing, and pride without love is empty." She turned to leave. "Salma, wait." Daniel stood abruptly, panic flooding his face. "Please, let's talk. We can fix this." Salma paused at the doorway, her back still to him. For a brief moment, she considered turning around, considered giving him one more chance. But then she remembered every silent dinner, every insult left unchallenged, every night she cried alone. Without turning, she whispered, "You had your chance to speak, Daniel. You chose silence. Now I choose freedom." And with that, she walked out into the night, the cool ocean breeze greeting her like an old friend. As Salma stepped into the waiting taxi she had arranged earlier, Nima stirred slightly, her tiny hand clutching her mother's blouse. Salma kissed her daughter's forehead, whispering softly, "It's just you and me now, my love. But that's enough. More than enough." Through the taxi window, she caught one last glimpse of the grand house, golden lights glowing against the night sky, a symbol of wealth but also of emptiness. For the first time, Salma felt no longing for their acceptance. Instead, she felt lighter, as though the chains that had bound her heart were finally broken. The road stretched ahead, leading her back to her modest apartment, to uncertainty, to struggle, but also to dignity, peace, and the freedom to raise her daughter in love. And for the first time in months, Salma smiled. Because she knew. Tonight wasn't the end of her story. It was the beginning. The night air in Dar es Salaam was heavy with salt and sea. But in Salma's heart, a new light had begun to flicker. She sat in the back of the taxi, her baby pressed against her chest, and for the first time in months she did not feel trapped. Yes, fear lingered. Yes, questions filled her mind. Where will I go? How will I raise Nima on my own? But beneath the fear was something stronger. It was resolve. By the time the taxi pulled up to her modest apartment in Mikakini, Salma had already made up her mind. This place, with its peeling paint and broken balcony rail, was not much. But it was hers. It was free from the poison of whispers, the crushing weight of judgment, the silence of a man who chose fear over love. As she unlocked the door, Nima stirred in her sleep. Salma whispered, "This is our home now. It may be small, but here no one will question who you are. Here we are enough." The days that followed were not easy. Bills piled up faster than Salma could count. The job she had paused during her pregnancy as a teaching assistant at a local school was no longer available. Food was simple. Beans, rice, ugali, sometimes vegetables from the neighbor's garden. But every night, as she cradled Nima to sleep, Salma reminded herself, this struggle is better than the comfort of humiliation. Her mother, Mariam, came to visit often. She would cook, clean, and remind Salma of the same words she had repeated all her life. A woman's worth is not given by others, my child. It is claimed by herself. One evening, as they shared steaming plates of pulao, Mariam placed her hand on her daughter's. "Come with me to Zanzibar for a while. The island air will heal you. You can work at the guest house with your cousin. Nima will grow by the ocean. You both need a new start." Salma hesitated, but deep in her heart she knew Mariam was right. 2 weeks later, Salma boarded a ferry with Nima strapped securely to her chest. As the boat cut across the blue-green waters of the Indian Ocean, the salty breeze brushed her face. She closed her eyes and let the sound of waves soothe the ache in her chest. Zanzibar welcomed her like a gentle embrace. The narrow winding alleys of Stone Town, the smell of spices drifting through the air, the calls of children playing barefoot on the sand, everything seemed to whisper of new beginnings. Her cousin's guest house was small but lively, tucked near the beach where tourists came to watch the sunset. Salma helped at the reception, served tea, and sometimes guided visitors through the spice markets. It wasn't glamorous, but it was honest work. At night, she would walk along the shore, Nima strapped on her back, the ocean stretching endlessly before them. The waves came and went, reminding her that life, too, carried away the old and brought in the new. Slowly, the wounds of the past began to heal. But the past had not forgotten her. One late afternoon, as the orange sun dipped low over the ocean, Salma returned to the guest house to find a familiar figure waiting by the entrance. Daniel. Her heart skipped. For a moment, old memories flooded back. The young man who had walked with her beneath the jacaranda trees, the man who had once made her feel seen. But those memories were quickly replaced by the echo of his silence at the dinner table. His failure to defend her. His choice to look away when she needed him most. "Salma," Daniel said softly, his eyes tired. "Please, just give me a chance to explain." Salma's cousin watched nervously from the doorway, but Salma simply nodded, leading Daniel to a quiet corner near the beach. For a long moment, they sat in silence, the ocean waves filling the space between them. Daniel's hands trembled as he spoke. "I was a coward," he admitted, his voice breaking. "I thought keeping peace with my family meant protecting you. I didn't realize my silence was destroying you. That night, I should have stood with you. I should have shouted your worth from the rooftops. Failed you, Salma. But please don't give up on us. Don't give up on me." Salma looked at him, her eyes soft but steady. "Do you know how many nights I cried, Daniel? Not because of your mother or Angela. I could endure their cruelty. I cried because the man I loved, the man I trusted, stood by and said nothing. Silence can wound deeper than words. And your silence nearly broke me." Daniel reached for her hand, but she pulled it away. I want to make it right, he pleaded. I'll stand up to them. I'll cut ties if I must. Just come back home. Let's be a family again. For a moment, Salma's heart wavered. She saw sincerity in his eyes, desperation even. A part of her wanted to believe him, to cling to the dream they had once shared. But then Nima stirred in her arms, her tiny hand clutching Salma's blouse. Salma looked down at her daughter and remembered why she had walked away. I don't doubt you love me, Daniel, she said quietly. But love without courage is not enough. I cannot raise my daughter waiting for you to find your voice. I need a partner who will stand beside me, not behind his fear. Daniel's eyes filled with tears. So, this is goodbye. Salma's own eyes glistened, but her voice was steady. No, Daniel. This is a beginning. For me, for Nima. For you too if you choose to grow. But I cannot carry the weight of your silence anymore. She stood, holding Nima close, and turned toward the guest house. Daniel remained seated, staring at the horizon as though searching for answers in the waves. Weeks turned into months. Daniel returned to Dar es Salaam, but Salma stayed in Zanzibar, carving out a life of her own. She became known among the locals and tourists alike for her warmth, her storytelling, her quiet strength. The guest house flourished with her help, and soon she began saving enough to dream of opening her own small cafe by the beach. Nima grew stronger each day, her laughter echoing through the narrow alleys, her first steps taken on the soft white sand. When she spoke her first word, Mama, Salma wept with joy. Her days were not without struggle. Money was still tight, exhaustion was real, and loneliness sometimes pressed heavy. But every time she watched the sunset paint the ocean gold, she remembered why she had chosen this path: dignity, peace, and freedom. One evening, as Salma sat on the balcony of the guest house, Nima asleep in her crib beside her, she opened a small notebook she had begun keeping. She wrote, I thought my story ended the night I walked away. But really that was the night it began. For too long I believed my worth depended on being accepted, on being defended. Now I know my worth was always mine to claim. I am not defined by their whispers, or by Daniel's silence. I am defined by the strength it took to leave, the love I give my daughter, and the peace I choose each day. She closed the notebook and smiled. Years later, Salma's cafe opened, a cozy spot near the beach where travelers came to taste spiced tea and hear stories of the island. She named it Nima's Place, after the daughter who had given her the courage to walk away and begin anew. Mama Grace and Angela never visited. Daniel, however, came once. He sat quietly in a corner, watching Nima laugh as she played by the sand. He said little, only offering a soft smile and a whispered, You've done well. Salma nodded, not with bitterness but with peace. She no longer needed his validation. As the sun dipped low and painted the horizon with fire, Salma held Nima's hand and whispered, We made it, my love. Against the whispers, against the silence, we made it. The waves crashed gently at her feet, carrying away the past, bringing in the future. And Salma, with her daughter by her side, stepped into that future with her head held high. Because in the end, her victory was not about proving anyone wrong. It was about proving herself right, that she was enough, that she was worthy, that she could build a life of love and dignity on her own terms. And that was the story worth telling.